Welcome to TT Wind Down Wednesday episode. I am super excited about tonight's hot topic. I had some good conversation with some folks and they said, this is a good topic. But before I get started to our show topic, I would like to thank all of my listeners all across the globe, starting with the United States, Bahrain, the Philippines, Canada, Ireland, Italy, Puerto Rico, where my sister and brother-in-law are right now visiting, United Kingdom, India, Saudi Arabia, the Netherlands, Russia, Germany, Denmark, Switzerland, Mexico, Egypt, and I got some new listeners in Brazil. I am super excited that you ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, have chosen TT from the D to tune into for Wind Down Wednesday segments. I'm fully aware that there are several other platforms that you could have chosen to chime into and listen to and unwind on the middle of the week hump day Wednesday, but you chose us, and for that I just have to say thank you. And by all means, remember, if my podcast show brings you joy, and you enjoy us, and you want to keep hearing us and seeing us, and some new things on the horizon, if you feel compelled, sow a seed. You, instead of sponsoring us on a monthly basis or whatever that looks like, you can just drop a seed here and there. If you would like to, you could send that to the Cash App of TTFromTheD. That would be the $, then TTFromTheD. TT from the D. So, tonight's hot topic is breaking generational curses. When I tell you, I've heard this phrase ever since I can remember. You hear things like, oh, yeah, she looked like her mama. Well, he looked just like his father. We've seen the physical characteristics of our parents or grandparents, or remind you of a relative. Sometimes those reminders aren't pleasant, right? You may have found yourself looking in the mirror and saying, I have a small nose, and then your sibling could have a big nose, or a relative, and you'd be like, well, where'd you get that from? Or you could be dark skinned or light skinned or pale, caramel. You could have blonde hair, brown hair, black hair, sandy brown hair, red hair, right? Based on the physical traits that our ancestors passed along, we are all mixed up across the globe. Believe it or not. Heredity is, you hear it often, something like, oh, that's in your DNA, right? You'll hear some people say, well, that's all hereditary. It's all hereditary. Yeah, it is passed through from generation to generation. That's not always the looks. It could be the behaviors. While not all things are curses, some are blessings. But we have to understand that we are who we are, right? Generational blessings and curses. We've talked about them, but let's really get in tune with it. I think that I could touch and agree with many people when they say family over everything. Family is important. It is. But people don't look at family values as they once did back in the day. Family is important to God. Okay? And it's clear that He wants us to be in unity and love, on one accord. And it don't always end up being that way. Okay? When God looks at you and He looks at me, He looks at your family, He sees where you come from. He knows where we came from. He knows all about the ancestors that were here prior to you. You can sit and say what you want, but what we need to be sitting and saying when we know that we're facing things that have been going on for generations after generations is that the buck stops here. Yeah, my mother might have done this, or yeah, my father might have done this, but that don't mean I'm going to do it. Yeah, Big Mama might have did it, Papa might have did it, but that don't mean I'm going to do it. I believe when God created the world, he created everything great underneath the sun. One of my favorite books in the Bible is Ecclesiastes 3:1-7. Really 3:1-9 if you're feeling real good, right? Generational iniquities, curses, as some would say, they run far, wide, deep in the bloodlines. If you have your Bible, or if you take this scripture down, you can look for this for yourself. But it says in Exodus 20:5-6, God warns the children of Israel not to follow false gods, saying, for I, the Lord, your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers upon the children to be the third and the fourth, showing mercies to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. Now, I'm going to have to tell you, I concerned myself deeply because I know that I've broken several commandments. But again, none of us are perfect. We're all a work in progress. And when you hear the word sin, it's just another word of iniquity. Right? You have to look and say, okay, what are some of the evidences of a curse? What could be some of the curses that we say we pass down from generation and generation? Poverty. I've literally grown up with people where their families were living in poverty, and it was taught to those some of those that I grew up with, no shade to anybody, but it was like, okay, so your mother or your father or your family, they're on assistance from the state. My mother too was on assistance from the state. I loved going to Focus Hope. Now I could be dating myself because some of y'all have never heard of Focus Hope, but that was the time where my mother would get assistance from the state. She took part in all of the natural resources such as Focus Hope, the WIC program, which is still around. Focus Hope might still be around. I'm not sure, but I loved when we went once a month to get that big block of cheese that made the best macaroni in the world. You made the best grilled cheese sandwiches. That orange juice. Oh, I loved the grape juice. The grape juice was better than this Welch's juice. The peanut butter. Okay? I didn't care for the milk or the powdered eggs. But those are the things. I didn't like the grits or whatever that was. I didn't like none of that. But that cheese and that juice, peanut butter. My mom used to make us homemade cookies with that peanut butter. And I say all that to say, I didn't realize we were kind of living in poverty because my mother made the best of what she had. She made it look good. As some people will say in today's time, you make it look easy. My mother made it look easy. But I knew that there were some things that I didn't want to follow my mother's footsteps. She raised 4 children, and all of her children are alive and well, living their lives prospectively, doing their own things in a great way. So salute to my mother. But there were seasons where we lived in poverty. That didn't mean that I needed to do it. That didn't mean that my sisters needed to do it. That didn't mean that my brother needed to do it. Then you hear about the hereditary disease. You go to the doctor. Does anybody in your family have heart disease, cancer, any other type of, disease that, and you're looking like, maybe my grandmother, my great-grand, you start going down, right? And then I learned a long time ago, just because your grandmother might have had high blood pressure does not necessarily mean that you will. It's a good chance, but it's not necessarily that you will. Sometimes I believe that sometimes people say it and put that out there because that's what we know. Well, it falls in your bloodline. It's a generational thing. Divorce. I've heard several people in my years of life, I ain't getting married because my auntie and uncle, they got divorced, or my mom and dad, they got divorced, or my grandparents got divorced. Then you got some people that'll say, now there's a flip side to that. Divorce is marriage. You know what? I'm going to get married, even if they don't want to. I'm going to get married because my mother and father been married X amount of time. I'm going to get married because my grandparents were married X amount of years. I'm going to get married because that's what we do in my family. Right? Remember, all generational blessings and cursings can go hand in hand, or they can be individually. Child abuse. If you grew up and you were disciplined in a different kind of way, some people might say, "Oh, girl, oh boy, you was being abused." Whatever that looked like, you could look and say, when I grow up, I'm never going to do this to my daughter. Never going to do this to my son. And then you can see traits. You start to see yourself mimic what you learned. Why? Because it's a learned behavior. However, you see somebody getting beat on, it's like a norm. And then, you might hear somebody say, "Well, I'm still here. My mother and father, they did this to me, and I'm still here, so you'll be okay." It's like, wow. Unfortunately, sexual abuse also can be a generational curse. You could be a victim of molestation or whatever that looks like, and you could pass it on not knowingly. Not understanding why you feel the way you feel and do the things you do. Right? But it's a choice. Domestic violence. You could grow up in a household where men or women can be violent. Let's be clear, it's not just men beating on women. You have your women that beat on men. We just don't hear about it because men don't normally call the police. But if you show that, that's the way we deal with things when we're mad. This is how we handle things when we're frustrated. 9 times out of 10, you're going to pass that on to your child or children, and they will carry it on. Well, my grandparents did this, or my mother and father did this, and they were just fine. Were they? Adultery. Yeah, my granddaddy used to cheat all the time. I'm talking hypothetically, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, my mother used to cheat all the time. My father used to cheat all the time. All the men in my family cheat. All the women in my family cheat. So that's why I do what I do. I think that's a scapegoat for some people, just to find somebody else to blame. Because we love to use the hand and point fingers, but there's the one finger on your hand that you cannot blame nobody else for. It won't even allow you to comfortably point them out or call them out with that finger, and that's the thumb. It's the only one that's facing you, because sometimes, more than not, you need to be accountable for your decisions, your choices. I tell my children all the time, every reaction is from an action. Cast it out into the world by you or someone you're close to. So we have to be mindful. Alcoholism. Alcoholism is, as they say, oh, that's hereditary. Your great-grandfather was an alcoholic. Your grandfather was an alcoholic. Your father was an alcoholic. Your mother was an alcoholic. So chances are that's why you're one. It's possible. It's in the DNA. I'm not going to deny that. But if you didn't like watching it, if you didn't like seeing your relatives like that, why on earth do you choose, or would you choose, to do the same thing that you despise to go together? Now that's rhetorical. Okay. Depression. Oh, you got that one relative or several relatives, they're depressed. It's almost like, oh, they're always, our family go through that. Like, oh, you hear that as an excuse a lot of times. And you might say, it's not an excuse, TT. But you look at it and say, well, I don't know why I'm this way. I guess it's hereditary. It runs in our family. Well, when is it going to stop running? Why can't you be that woman? Why can't you be that man that stops it? Rhetorical again. Indecision. You can't blame that on nobody but yourself. But you can say, well, you know what? I'm just like my mom. She'll never know. Or I'm just like my dad. He'll never know. That don't mean that you have to be like that. Panic attacks. I don't know about that one. I sometimes suffer from certain things from panic attacks. But I don't recall my mother or my father or my grandparents. Or an uncle or aunt, cousin, or anybody really dealing with anxiety or panic attacks. I think I'm the first from what I know. Right? Now, here's one that people will say, yeah, that's hereditary. That runs in the blood. It's a curse. It's a generational curse. Mental illness. But let me say this, in light of mental awareness, loving on our family, our friends, those that are struggling in mind, mental illness is a sickness. And it's just like any other thing. People that suffer need to have assistance, love, and support, and help to be able to beat that thing. We can't leave people out here to fend for themselves. You can, but is it really gonna serve them any good? No. We all could use a little bit of help every now and then. But mental illness is something that you could really say, that rolls in my family. And you could be 100% accurate and true. But what can you do for yourself or your loved one, like a child, your spouse, significant other, whatever? Help your parents or grandparents or relative that you've seen happen to other people and they had no help. We're at a different place and space in this century. And there's opportunities for help out there. The problem I think we have as human beings is that we want to pass judgment and call somebody crazy or whatever. Some people struggle harder than others. Some people don't have common sense. Some people have created mental prisons for themselves or escape routes for themselves in their mind to take them away from some of the awful things that has happened in their life. So we can't act like it doesn't exist, or it might not be you or someone you love. But what we do need to stop doing is acting like it's contagious, because it's not. You do have some people that, were birthed by a man by a woman. But, the DNA from a man, it could be on the man's side of the family. It could run a history of it. And if so, learn your history. Learn about your family. All of those can be things that we say are a part of generational curses. And most of them are rooted deeply. You don't know sometimes until you start to talk to the older generation. And when you start to say things, they say, that sounds familiar. Because they can self-identify, or they can identify. And they say, oh my God, that reminds me of Auntie so-and-so. That reminds me of cousin so-and-so. That reminds me of Uncle so-and-so. And then you realize it jumps from generation to generation. You might even hear somebody say, I think that skipped your generation. I've heard that too. There's a pattern there. And it's going back to grandpa, grandma. The good news is that generational curses can be stopped. You plead the blood every day. I know I do. In Hebrews 9:22, it says, according to the law, almost all things are purified with blood. And without the shedding of blood, the principles you need to know. Generational curses come through the bloodline. Generational curses can and only be canceled by the bloodline. You got to speak life every single day, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Every single day. Speak life. You got to pray for people and let God have them. We're not going to always touch and agree on things. And everybody has the right to make their own human choice. But be mindful. The choices you make can affect your future. And they more than not do. They do. So, if you remember to take a seat at the table, make sure on your plate you got a little bit of mercy, a little bit of grace, and a lot of love and patience. It's important that we appreciate one another. It's important that we appreciate who we come from. Families are going to have division. A lot of families are divided. It's unfortunate, but it is what it is. Some you can help, some you can't help. Some will walk to help you, some will run to help you, and some will run away from you, walk away from you. But I thank God for everybody that I could look at and say, I got a little bit of this from you, a little bit of that. and you got me to that next journey of that chapter of my life. And I can only hope that I can do the same for those that's on my bloodline. But if I can't bring you any positiveness, if I can't bring and add joy to your life in your season, I'm not doing you any good, and I will happily dismiss myself. But that's just the way I look at it. You might think to yourself, how can I pass blessings, not generational curses? By keeping God first, knowing that you are better than most. And I ain't saying you're better than everybody, but the one person or those people you look down upon, or you were told you was going to be like, but you looking at them like, I'm nothing like them. Pray for them. Make your mark. You are who you are. You deserve to be who you are. You deserve to be exactly who God said you were meant to be. And don't you let anybody tell you you're going to be anything different. In Deuteronomy 30:15 and 19, it says, see, I have set before you today life and good, death and evil. I call heaven and earth have set before you life and death, blessings and cursing, or curses. Therefore, the choice is yours. You could choose life that both you and your descendants may have, or you could choose death. And a lot of times, just because we're living and breathing doesn't mean we're alive. You could very well be alive but dead in the spirit. We have to learn where we come from, how we get to where we want to go, by where we've been, by those that's been before us. Think of this, the evil fruit. Okay? Think about evil fruit. I'm going to give you some examples. Okay? And these fall under generational curses. Real talk. Okay? Under evil fruit, possessiveness. You might find greed and jealousy, laziness, gambling, stinginess, hoarding, stealing, poverty, indebtedness. I've had several of those, and I'm sure that you can relate to one or two or more. Under sexual sin, lust, fornication, adultery, pornography, masturbation, homosexuality, incest, sexual abuse of others, rape. I fall under that as well. Anger issues, unforgiveness, bitterness, hatred, rage, violence, aggressiveness, onward towards others, revenge, murder. I fall under that as well. Fears. Fears of failure, fear of man, fear of evil, fear of the dark, fear of closed places, fear of heights, fear of losing salvation, fear of the unknown, fear of God, the unhealthy kind anyway, and panic attacks. I fall under fear. Substance addiction, illegal drugs, prescribed medications, alcohol, tobacco, caffeine, food issues such as overeating, bulimia, anorexic, yada yada. I fall under substance addictions. Rebellion towards God and authority. Stubbornness, pride, disobedience, lawlessness, witchcraft, arrogance, controlling attitude, idolatry. I fall under rebellion. Occult involvement, witchcraft, Satanism, consulting a psychic, palm reading, fortune telling, witch for water, Ouija board, horoscope, pendulum, hypnotism. I hate to say it, I fall under occult involvement. Covenant breaking, adultery, divorce, broken arrangements and agreements, broken contracts, not given and kept in order to hold our promises. Unfortunately, I fall under that as well. Covenant breaking, false religions, Eastern religion, Buddhism, Islamism, Buddhism, Bahaism, Indian religions, legalism, salvation by works, Jehovah's Witnesses, cults, Mormonism, faithlessness, unbelieving, pessimistic, doubting. I'm good on that one. I don't fall under that. Critical spirit, being critical of others, judgmentalism, belittling others, joking at the expense of others, self-righteous, coldness, general rejection of others. I fall, unfortunately, under that critical spirit. Victim mentality, being passive, poor me attitude, loneliness, expecting failure, doubt, hopelessness, unworthiness. Thank God I'm not under that one. Emotional issues, moodiness, depression, self-rejection, self-hatred, suicidal, nightmares, delusions. Unfortunately, I fall under that one as well. Uncontrolled tongue, lying, slander, cursing, swearing, exaggeration, denial, foul mouth, gossip. Unfortunately, I fall under that too. Mental illness, bipolar disorder, personality disorder, obsessive compulsive disorder, autistic disorder, schizophrenia, ADD and ADHD, MPD or DID. I don't fall under that, but I could have. Physical diseases, cancer, heart disease, lung disease, kidney stones, stomach problems, migraine headaches, etc. Could fall under that too. These are all evil fruits, according to generational breaking curses, right? These are all evil fruits, and all the things I rambled off, they come from a tree. And the root of the tree is your mother, your father, your grandfather, your grandmother, your great-grandmother, your great-grandfather, right? And inside the tree of life, we deal with curses, victim mentality, physical diseases, false religions, substance abuse, substance addiction, mental illness, covenant breaking, fears, sexual sins, critical spirits, occult involvement, rebellion, uncontrolled tongue, anger, possessiveness. See, it came from somewhere. When I look back and I say, yep, I fall into that, a learned behavior. There was no one to walk me through and talk me through how to deal with my sexual sins, or my possessiveness, or my anger issues, or my fears, or my substance addictions, right? Or rebellion. There was nobody there. The occult involvement, just for those of you that be like, you follow a cult? No. When I was a child, I used to play with a Ouija board. I had a terrible experience with it, but I did do it. I used to read my horoscope. I used to love reading the horoscope, but they said that could be under a cult vision. I'm like, okay. So there was nobody to talk about covenant breaking, false religion, emotional issues, victim mentality, all these things. But I decided I didn't want that for my children. I decided I'm not only going to pray that off of my children and their children and my nieces and nephews, but just myself, my husband, our marriage, our union, my friends, extended friends, chosen friends, extended family, chosen extended family, those I know and love. We talk with people every single day, don't we? And in the midst of talking, you learn about people. I'm one of them people that I pray even when you don't ask me to pray. Because I can't imagine life without being able to pray. And that's my choice. I'm not telling you that's what you got to do. That's what TTFromTheD does. Because I've seen prayer change things. I'm a believer. I can't help it. Have I always been a believer? No. I was a believer because I was raised to be one. Generational blessing. My mama Nez, but she was my father's mother, Mama Nez. One of the best grandmothers ever in this world. So very happy that I had the blessing and opportunity to know her in the season of my young life when I did. I feel like they don't make grandmothers like Mama Nez anymore. But I learned, to be a prayer warrior, to be praying about everything. She prayed and talked to God all the time. But the grandmother that I knew growing up was a different version of a grandmother that my older cousins, my first cousins, would know, because she was younger and more spry and probably more about her business when they were younger. I came along and my grandmother was already a true grandmother in her 70s, right? Saying all that to say, the buck can start with you. It can stop with you. How does that make sense, TT? You are who you are. You have to decide when you look at yourself in the mirror, when you look at your child or children, as your parent or parents, as your grandparent or grandparents, at your cousins, at your relatives, and say, I've seen this familiarness. I don't want that. If it didn't work for them and it ain't good, why do you think it's going to work for you and be good? You decide what you want and you make it happen. If you're going to wait for people to make things happen, they're going to do exactly what they want to do. And you, my friend, have no choice in the matter. You have no choice in the matter. Well, I'm not here to preach. I am here to educate, encourage, and motivate you. I want you to be great in whatever it is you choose to do. A lot of us suffer from generational curses, as we say. I've seen some things on both sides of my family that I say, not in my house, not with my children. I pray on it. I pray over them. But guess what? At the end of the day, my children have to make their own decisions. And they will. They do, and they have. They understand that with every reaction was an action. It was an action prior to that reaction. We have to handle things differently. Sometimes we don't want to deal with things that's right in our face, but acting like it doesn't exist or it's not there will not make it go away. You have to meet that thing head on. If you're dealing with something and you know it's generational, you can say, listen, Lord, listen, Father God, I can't beat this or deal with this alone. And ask Him to help you. And I promise you, you will see things change. Well, that's all for tonight. I hope that you enjoy the rest of your Wind Down Wednesday. Remember, you can catch us each and every Wednesday for Wind Down Wednesday at 8 o'clock right here on Spotify and Anchor.fm and every other platform that you will see this show on or listen to this show on. We have some amazing information to share with you in the next couple of weeks as we move into season 3 and shut down for season 2. Shout out to Beth, who is charting like a wildfire. If you don't have her album, Get to Know Me, you definitely want to check that out. Shout out to Everard Cassimy, who is our very own Detroit WDIV Local 4 morning anchor. He's a recording artist. He's being blessed and getting ready to take flight and move and relocate to Chicago. He's doing a fundraiser, one of his very last ones for the city of Detroit, for Cass High School. Salute to them both. They are amazing and working on those things right now as we speak. I'm super excited. I'm a part of Team Beth. I'm also rocking out, and I'll be a part of Team Evrod November 5th. I'll be serving as his stage manager at his awesome event at the Imagine Theater in Royal Oak. You can also catch me Tap In Tuesdays by going to www.streamyard.com/Facebook. Log into your Facebook account so you can share your questions and comments, or you can just catch us over on my YouTube page, LinkedIn, Twitter, or by going to www.facebook.com/TTFromTheD podcast. I'll see you soon.